Regular meeting number 12 will now come to order. Please stand for the playing of the national anthem. Councilmember Remy, would you lead us in the pledge? This afternoon, Council is appreciative to have Ms. Susan Davis here representing the Baha'i faith to pray with us. Welcome.
O thou kind Lord, this gathering is turning to thee. These hearts are radiant with thy love. These minds and spirits are exhilarated by the message of thy glad tidings. O God, let this American democracy become glorious in spiritual degrees, even as it has aspired to material degrees, and render this just government victorious. Confirm this revered nation to upraise the standard of the oneness of humanity, to promulgate the most great peace, to become thereby most glorious and praiseworthy among all the nations of the world. O God, this American nation is worthy of thy favors and is deserving of thy mercy. Make it precious and near to thee through thy bounty and bestowal. That was a prayer from Abdul Baha. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, Favor, Remy, President Harden. Any person who takes any actions to obstruct or interfere with the conduct of tonight's meeting may be charged with disturbing a lawful meeting pursuant to Columbus City Code 2317.12. Any person who enters those areas of city council chambers reserved for city officials or invited guests may be charged with criminal trespass pursuant to Columbus City Code 2311.21.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Can I get a motion to dispense with the reading of the journal? Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, Favor, Remy, President Harden.
Are there any additions or corrections to the journal? Hearing none, the journal is approved. This week's communications received by the City Clerk's office are listed on the agenda and will be published in the City Bulletin. Are there any other communications to be read into the record?
Not at this time.
We'll go around the dais for any updates or resolutions, starting with Councilmember Bangston.
Thank you, President Harden. Just one announcement, just a reminder that the application for Accelerate Columbus is still open and will remain open until all the slots are filled. If you remember, we passed this legislation as a way for us to provide accelerator and entrepreneur services to our entrepreneurs and small business community free of charge to them. So the application can be accessed through the Columbus Small Biz Hub at cbussmallbiz.com or the city's website at columbus.gov/accelerate, and also on all of my social media pages. The first group of applicants should receive additional information from their selected program partner over the next couple of weeks. So we're really excited about this program and want to continue to remind our small business and entrepreneurs to take advantage. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilmember. Good work on that as well. Councilmember Rosa de Padilla.
Nothing from me this evening. Thank you.
Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Council President. First, I want to say thank you to you for attending the job fair this weekend at the Rec and Parks facility, and to reiterate that there are jobs available for lifeguards, again, paying $17 an hour, and also individuals concerned with becoming an aide or working in different positions at the Rec and Park Center to contact Mr. Rob Reiser at 614-645-2348, or they can visit the following website, columbusrecparks.com/connect/employment. I'm sure Councilmember Remy got all of that. So thank you, Council President. That's all I have.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, it was great to be out at the hiring fair. There are literally hundreds of jobs open in Rec and Parks for this summer. It's really important that we hire, and so much so that we increase pay for certain positions, including lifeguards. And so,
Including lifeguards. Yes,
including
thank you.
lifeguards. Awesome. Councilmember Dorans. Councilmember Favor.
Thank you, Council President Harden. March is Women's History Month, where we celebrate women's contributions to history, culture, and society in the United States. This year's theme is celebrating women who tell our stories. This theme recognizes women, past and present, who have been active in all forms of media and storytelling, including art, poetry, print, radio, news, and social media. Tonight, I would like to celebrate and honor Barbara Brandon Croft. Croft is an American cartoonist, best known for creating the comic strip Where I'm Coming From, and for being the first nationally syndicated African-American female cartoonist. She attended the College of Visual and Performing Arts at Syracuse University, and in 1982, she developed a cartoon feature for Elin, a magazine for Black women. She later joined the staff of Essence Magazine as their fashion and beauty writer. She also created illustrations for The Crisis, published by the NAACP, as well as for The Village Voice and MCA Records. She was first recognized for the comic strip Where I'm Coming From, which traces the experiences of 12 African-American women and gives insight into the challenges of being an African-American woman living in the United States. The comic strip was featured in more than 60 newspapers between 1989 and 2004 and appeared in newspapers throughout the United States. It was the first comic strip by a Black woman to be syndicated in a mainstream newspaper. I actually learned a lot about Miss Barbara's story while listening to NPR last week. And so if you're interested, like I was, definitely check out NPR, as they ran a really great interview on Miss Barbara Brandon Croft last week in honor of Women's History Month. That's all for me, Council President Harden.
Councilmember Remy.
Thank you very much, Council President Harden. Mark your calendars. Litter is no joke. The second annual Cleaner Columbus citywide cleanup is coming up on Saturday, April 1st. Kicking off at 9 a.m. at the Wolf Park Shelter House. Join your fellow neighbors for a morning of service, picking up litter and helping make Columbus safe and clean. You can learn more and register by visiting cleanercolumbus.org. Group signups are welcome too. You can email cleanercolumbus@columbus.gov with questions. We just finished up cleaning up the ramp at 11th and 71 for Kick Butt Columbus on Saturday. It was at least not raining, and actually cleaner than it was last year. So it was a good day of fellowship for the council member team, and I know the mayor's team was out. So great opportunity to help clean up the community, especially this time of year when it's cold and drab. It looks at its worst. So we look forward to April 1st coming up. Thanks so much. That's all I have this evening.
Thank you, Councilmember. Elected officials, the auditor.
There we go. Thank you, Council President. Two quick things. One, an acknowledgement of a lot of work that went into some presentations last week. We hosted Moody's Ratings in town for a very, very in-depth conversation. It lasted a full day. There were 3 directors who were with us largely the whole day. Yourself and the mayor joined, and I just wanted to acknowledge the amount of work. It takes a village. That's one of those times, but it further proves the incredible management of the city, and I was very proud to see that. Secondly, with respect to tax time, we're now about 30 days away from our tax date, and this will be the first date that anyone can file their taxes online fully, as easy as using your own favorite at-home tax provider software like TurboTax or anything else. It is 100% online with the city now and should be a very good user experience. We're going to start rolling out some social media, so if you see that and you're willing to reshare, I would appreciate that very much. Thank you.
That's awesome, and thank you for your fiscal leadership of our city and all the work that your team did to prepare for Moody's being in town. From Treasurer's Department, City Attorney? All right, are there any requests by members of council for the removal of an ordinance from the consent portion of the agenda? Seeing none, may we now have a motion to waive reading the title of the third-day legislation by the city clerk? Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Thank you. Will the clerk now read the record for ordinance numbers 30-day legislation on tonight's agenda?
Economic Development Committee, ordinances 787 and 791-2023. Public Utilities Committee, ordinances 200, 514, 590, 601, 632, 639, 650-2023. Housing Committee, ordinance 679 and 733-2023. Rules and Reference Committee, ordinance 1730-2022. Zoning Committee, ordinances 740, 741, 758-2023.
We don't have any speakers on the first reading portion of the agenda. Will the clerk now read the following ordinance appear on our agenda as consent? Would the clerk now read those into the record?
Resolutions of expression 40X and 41X-2023, Small and Minority Business Committee, Ordinance 774-2023, Technology Committee, Ordinance 560 and 581-2023, Public Service and Transportation Committee, Ordinance 3485-2022, and Ordinances 654, 655, 671, 687-2023, Public Utilities Committee, Ordinances 491, 637, 640-2023, Housing Committee, Ordinances 720, 747, 753-2023, Health and Human Services Committee, ordinances 460 and 591-2023. Public Safety Committee, ordinances 597, 602-2023. Finance Committee, ordinances 636, 643, 649, 676, 677-2023. And one appointment this evening, A0097-2023.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have one speaker on the consent portion agenda. That's Mr. Nate Wilkins. Mr. Wilkins, welcome back to council. Bless you. Mr. Wilkins is speaking on ordinance 0753 in the Housing Committee in support of that ordinance.
1612 Arlington Avenue, Mr. Lathan George Wilkins. I'm going to speak in for this, but I think we're still leaving out the multiple disability people and visually impaired and other different type of people. But I would like to see this in place for more than 25 years. I know we talk about first-time home buyers and things and stuff like that, but we want to idolize the resources to be idolized for multiple disability people and visually impaired. Those type of people should be included into these type of ordinance. So that's why I want to recommend, also other different people that's come from different countries, different languages and things like that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkins. Are there any other questions or comments on the consent portion of the agenda? Hearing none, may I have a motion for approval of these items designated as consent? Clerk, please call the roll by voice.
Mr. Bangston,
Yes, with the exception of ordinance 0591-2023, from which I'm abstaining.
Ms. Barosa de Padilla,
Yes.
Mr. Brown, Mr. Dorans, Ms. Faber,
Yes, with the exception of ordinance 0774, 348, 2023, 3485, 2022, and 591-2023, from which I'm abstaining.
Mr. Remy.
Yes.
President Harden.
Yes, consent portion of the agenda is passed. We'll now proceed with the second reading of 30-day postponed and emergency legislation. First committee to come before council is the Technology Committee. Committee is chaired by Councilmember Bankston. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President. First up for second reading in the Technology Committee is ordinance 0507-2023 to authorize the Director of the Department of Technology on behalf of various city departments to renew a contract with Converge One, Inc. for maintenance and support services associated with the city's interactive voice response system, to waive the competitive bidding provisions of Columbus City Code, and to authorize the expenditure of $198,579.61 from the Department of Technology Information Services Operating Fund. On April 26, 2021, Ordinance 0724-2021 passed, authorizing a contract via a waiver of competitive bids with Converge One to continue maintenance and support of the system. At that time, Converge One submitted a 5-year quote to be renewed with council approval on an annual basis. The Department of Technology requests that the aforementioned contract be renewed for a second year to ensure continuation of the noted services, which will allow the department sufficient time to bid out maintenance and support for the entire system. Bidding out the entire system is necessary because Genesis has a policy of not allowing multiple parties to support their IVR systems until DOT can can develop comprehensive specifications. The department is requesting that the contract with Converge One be renewed and that the provisions of competitive bidding be waived in this instance. Many different departments use the IVR system, including 311, Public Utilities, Building and Zoning, and the Technology Committee. Now, are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Pass.
Thank you. Next for second reading in the Technology Committee is ordinance 0580-2023 to authorize the Director of the Department of Technology to enter into contracts with Vertiv Corporation for annual maintenance and related services associated with the uninterrupted power supply systems in accordance with sole source provisions of Columbus City Code, to waive the competitive bidding provisions of Columbus City Code, to authorize the Director of the Department of Technology to enter into contract with Vertiv Corporation for heating, cooling, and ventilation system and various equipment maintenance, and to authorize the expenditure of $214,041.61 from the Department of Technology Information Services Division Information Services Operating Fund. This ordinance authorizes the Director of the Department of Technology to enter into a contract with Vertiv Corporation for maintenance and related services to the city's uninterrupted power supply systems. As a result of various systems and equipment failures / malfunctions at the city's data center, the Department of Technology has selected one comprehensive vendor with the expertise to manage all equipment under one umbrella contract. Previously, there were 5 separate vendors and contracts performing routine maintenance and support services which were not cost-effective nor efficient for the city. Although maintenance services for the UPS system are available from other suppliers, Vertiv Corporation is the only factory-authorized service provider for the UPS equipment used at the city's data centers, hence the waiving of competitive bidding. This ordinance also authorizes funding in the amount of $50,000 for unforeseen circumstances, replacement parts, and maintenance services not covered in the maintenance contract or agreement. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you, Council President, and that is all we have in my committees this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next committee to come before council is the Public Service and Transportation Committee, chaired by Councilmember Barosa de Padilla. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President. I have 2 ordinances today in public service. Ordinance 0648-2023 to appropriate funds within the Federal Transportation Grants Fund to authorize the Director of Public Service to enter into contract with the Gudenkopf Corporation for the Signal Installation Columbus Traffic Signal System Phase F project, to authorize the expenditure of up to $11,715,000 from the Information Services Taxable Debt Fund, Federal Transportation Grants Fund, and Streets and Highways Bond Fund for the Signal Installation Columbus Traffic Signal System F, and to declare an emergency. The existing Columbus Traffic Signal System, CTSS, was conceived and initiated in the 1970s to provide state-of-the-art control for its time. The system allows for monitoring and operating for more than 1,000 signalized intersections. This is the sixth phase of a series of projects to migrate all Columbus traffic signals to a new central traffic control system. It's a big undertaking. The project will upgrade traffic signal and communications infrastructure at approximately 175 intersections citywide. The communications network will be expanded at 50 intersections already connected to the Columbus Traffic Management Center, and 75 traffic signals will be added. Director, is there anything that you would like to add?
I would just add that the majority of this is through federal grants, over $10 million of it. And so we just have a very small amount in per the city. And actually, for all 6 phases, it has been that way. So it's been a great partnership, and thank you for funding phases A through E. And I think we're actually only going to have one more phase after this, but that is a ways down the road. And that's all I have.
And Director, at a certain point, will we be able to share with the public where we're going to either make new installations or make those changes?
Yep, actually, for this project, the major corridors we're going to be on will be East Fifth Avenue, Hamilton Road, Alum Creek Drive, Cassidy Avenue, and Smoky Row Road. So that will take us through the majority of the city with this phase.
Awesome. And I also want to just highlight that that's where we also have some major traffic improvements already happening on some of those corridors as well. Great.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Do any of my colleagues have any questions or comments? Great. Seeing none, I move for passage.
Second.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor Remy, President Harden.
Pass.
Thank you. Ordinance 0690-2023 to appropriate funds within the East Broad Dominion TIF Fund to authorize the transfer of funds between the East Broad Dominion TIF Fund and the East Broad Dominion TIF Capital Fund to appropriate funds within the East Broad Dominion TIF Capital Fund to authorize the Director of Public Service to enter into a contract modification with Burgess and Nyepel in connection with the Arterial Street Rehabilitation East Broad Street, Outer Belt Street to Reynoldsburg, New Albany Road project, and to authorize the expenditure of up to $1,900,000 from the East Broad Dominion TIF Capital Fund for the project and to declare an emergency. This is the second phase of a major widening project to construct new thoroughways and turn lanes. Work will include widening of the bridge over Utsinger Ditch, traffic signal improvements, addition of a shared use path, sidewalks, street lighting, street trees, and signal interconnection conduits. This ordinance will allow for the completion of the necessary design work for this project. Director, anything to add for this one?
I apologize, I didn't address you appropriately last time. President Harden, Council Chair Barosa de Padilla, and other members of council. Like you said, this is Phase 2. The first phase for East Broad Street is currently in design and will go into construction next year, and then this one will follow. This project, like you said, is being funded, the design out of TIF dollars, and the construction, we hope, will be almost all paid for with federal funds.
Great, thank you. Do any of my colleagues have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Second.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor Remy, President Harden.
Pass.
And that's all for these committees.
Okay. The next committee to come before, thank you, Madam Chair. Come here. The next committee to come before council is the Finance Committee. We're coming back to your committee. You can go ahead and do it now. Yeah.
All right,
Yeah,
well,
no
I'd like to
problem.
move to rules and reference, please.
Let's do it.
Great, let's do it. So thank you, Council President. I have one ordinance today and rules and reference, and we're going to spend a little bit of time on this ordinance because I'm sure folks have either come to a public hearing or involved in other community conversations or may have seen stories about this particular piece of legislation. So I want to share some perspective. Last year, my office began exploring legislation that would address pay disparities in our community. This piece of legislation that we'll be presenting this evening is both an industry best practice and a legislative practice in 21 cities and various municipalities around the country, including Cincinnati and Toledo. And it is no coincidence that we're introducing this the day before Women's Equal Pay Day, which is tomorrow. Our aim is to narrow the pay gap for women and to work towards pay equity for all people. These are two sides of coin when it comes to pay disparity. Pay equity ensures that all people are paid equitably for the work they perform, ensuring that we are putting value on the work and not the person. The pay gap usually refers to women and has long been an issue since women entered the workforce en masse. And while past legislation like the Equal Pay Act of 1963 and the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act of 2009 helped to narrow the gap for women, still more work needs to be done. For example, in the 70s, women made 59 cents on the dollar, and today women make about 84 cents on the dollar. If you're not quick with math, which I certainly am not, in my lifetime, we've only moved the needle by 25 cents. And those numbers changed dramatically for Black and Latina women. With this in mind, we are introducing the salary history prohibition that removes salary history from the application and interview process so that potential applicants and employers enter into a more fair negotiation process. While no piece of legislation is perfect, we are confident that this legislation will continue to narrow the pay gap for women in Columbus and is yet another way to center the prosperity of our people and families. I want to thank the Columbus Chamber, the Women's Commission, the Columbus Partnership, who convened nearly 100 business owners and companies, large and small, in conversations about this legislation over the past 6 weeks. I want to thank and acknowledge the YWCA of Central Ohio, Zora's House, our labor leaders in AFSCME 2191 and Central Ohio Labor Council, the National Association of Social Workers, the Human Service Chamber of Franklin County, the Latina Mentoring Academy, Action for Children, and the Women's Fund for your support of this legislation and for being partners in this work. I want to acknowledge our partners in the business community like AEP, L Brand, Cardinal Health, JP Morgan Chase, and our very own City of Columbus, who already use this strategy in their hiring practices. As Columbus continues to grow and more companies move to Columbus or start businesses in Columbus, we want to ensure that they not only do business in Columbus, but do the business of Columbus. So I want to thank our partners who are already leading the way. This legislation will come into effect on March 1st, 2024, and throughout this next year, we'll convene an advisory group of business owners, leaders, and industry experts who will advise on a toolkit and learning series for both potential employees and applicants, and employers. We kick off the series later this month on March 29th with a salary negotiation workshop that is free and open to the public at Columbus State Community College. You can find out more on our social media channels and on the city's website. Lastly, I want to acknowledge that the original piece of legislation we shared with the community included a prohibition on credit history used in hiring practices with exceptions on industry and job function. We removed this piece from this current ordinance that I'm going to introduce this evening based on conversations with the business community. We deemed it necessary to dig further into this practice and have more intentional conversations about how and when we use a potential employee's credit history. I'd now like to introduce the ordinance, and I know that we have a few speakers. Ordinance 0709-2023 to enact Chapter 2335 to amend sections 137.02 and 2301.05 and to repeal existing sections 139.02 and 2301.05 of Columbus City Code and to promote pay equity in Columbus. This ordinance enacts a new chapter of City Code to promote pay equity by prohibiting the inquiry, use, entry, and use of salary history information in the hiring process for job applicants. This ordinance also amends sections of City Code related to the enforcement of these provisions by the Community Relations Commission. We have 3 speakers on this ordinance, and I would first like to introduce Lalitha Padnithigatam. Did I get it right, Lalitha? I was working so hard. To the podium first to speak, and next on deck we have Danielle Smith. For each of our folks, you have 3 minutes at the podium. If you will introduce yourself and any organizations that you represent.
Okay, thank you. My name is Lalitha Padnithigatam, and I'm here on behalf of YWCA Columbus. Council members, thank you so much for hearing my testimony today. I am here on behalf of YWCA Columbus, which is a shelter and childcare agency on a mission to eliminate racism and empower women. We are so thankful for the council member for introducing this diligent work and including us in this conversation, because if this piece of legislation is passed, it would support women of color and other marginalized groups by limiting the usage of salary histories in the hiring process. Discriminatory practices such as that would actually preserve the status quo, one that YWCA Columbus is determined to break. The wage and earnings gap between men and women is well documented, with discrepancies growing between white male workers and marginalized people when the data is broken down by demographic. We'd actually like to note that the data is also incomplete, exemplified by how AAPI women often experience an invisible pay gap within the monolith that is not caught due to lack of disaggregated data, and that trans women experience a pay gap that is also not well documented. But these are also the same populations that are disproportionately impacted by homelessness, a lack of access to childcare, systemic and interpersonal violence, and other forms of oppression. The problem is clear. Systemic and structural biases showcase themselves in interpersonal exchanges such as hiring processes, and they are impacting the ability of marginalized workers to realize their full potential in and outside of the workplace. And we know this legislation is likely a piece of the solution. There is early data from California showing that limiting the use of salary history leads to a narrowing wage gap. Additionally, these practices will enable companies to do better. Better pay and compensation for women allows companies to retain diverse workforces, seeing an overall improvement in productivity and retention rates, which benefits their bottom line. While this is only one step towards protecting and promoting equitable wages for women, we commend this step forward. We are hopeful for women and families that we house, amongst the most marginalized in the city, but also for women at large, from the working class mom getting back onto her feet, to the newly graduated young woman taking her first steps towards her career, to the transgender woman achieving a safe and welcoming workplace with appropriate compensation. This legislation helps to break the status quo. Until gender justice, justice. And just an aside, this past week, I actually had 2 conversations with women who accepted less than they deserved in their first jobs after graduate school, because they weren't aware that they weren't supposed to tell them their previous salaries. So this is a really real thing, and we are really looking forward to seeing this passed. And I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Danielle Smith. I'm the Executive Director of the National Association of Social Workers Ohio chapter, and I'm a social worker myself. We wholeheartedly support Councilmember Barosa de Patel's proposed ordinance to prohibit the requirement for salary histories in the employment process, which would protect social workers themselves and the clients they serve in Columbus. Fair and equal salary is an issue central to social work practice due to, in large part, to the fact that 80% of social workers are women. As we've heard here today, the pay gap for women is substantial and is worse for women of color, trans folks, and other people who live at the intersections of oppression. Prohibiting the use of a salary history is one step in addressing this gap. When salary histories are allowed, employers likely will anchor the amount and offer a salary that they assume the candidate will take based on the precedent of past jobs, without offering the amount that is fair and appropriate for the job. This can lock someone into low salaries for the rest of their career. A researcher calculated that a 22-year-old woman just out of college could lose out on over $750,000 in her lifetime if she did not negotiate for $5,000 more in annual salary early in her career. I have an example from our profession, although not exactly the same. It gives some illustration to the problem. A social worker told me that she was required to give a requested salary early in the interview process. She unfortunately put an amount that was similar to what she had already been earning, with a modest increase, similar to the person who testified before me, thought that that's what she should do. So she started working and then was pulled aside by someone in human resources who told her they shouldn't tell her this, but she was getting paid $15,000 less than they typically pay for that position. It's easy to see the parallels between this story and situations that occur. There's been significant research on what's called the anchoring effect, a cognitive tendency that biases people toward the first piece of information they encounter in decision-making. A University of Idaho study published in 2011 showed that the first number offered by a job applicant in a salary negotiation, even an extreme implausible number, provided an anchor that raised the eventual offer. If the salary number is in a salary negotiation is an applicant's existing low salary, perhaps one that's lower than it should be due to race or gender, that can limit growth for the rest of their career. Being underpaid once should not be a sentence for being underpaid for the rest of your life. In addition to the salary history ban, encourage you all to think about requiring employers to post the salary range for position, which would also help, and encourage you for the credit history ban, or the credit check as well. Thank you for the opportunity to address you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President Harden. Thank you, Councilmember Padilla, and thank you to everyone here at City Council. I'm happy to speak in favor of pay equity. I'm Bhumika Patel, Deputy Director of the Human Service Chamber of Franklin County. We are a membership organization of over 160 health and human service nonprofits providing or supporting direct service in Columbus and Franklin County. Just want to note that I'm really thankful to City Council for all the support that you've offered our sector and our members over the past few years. I don't think any other entity in our region has offered the level of support that you all have. I appreciate that City Council is focusing on equity issues, including pay equity. I'm speaking in favor of this ordinance that would prohibit employers from inquiring into and using salary history information in the process of hiring. It's a common practice to ask for salary history, but I think we all understand that this can have really unintended consequences. The unintended consequence of barring qualified applicants from good work and systematically relegating women and people of color to lower pay because of discrimination. The practice of using salary history to evaluate applicants, to set compensation, to negotiate salary relies on false assumptions about the relationship between salary and worker value. Looking at salary history does not take into consideration the existing labor market or the applicant's current qualifications or their current capacity to do that work. Salary history is not an objective value of a worker's value. Eric Klorick, CEO of Action for Children and the chair of the Human Service Chamber's Public Policy Committee, spoke at a previous City Council meeting about pay equity. He said when employers obtain salary history, when they know your number, they are not seeing the content of that applicant's character, nor accounting their skills or talents. They're seeing the accumulated results of decades of social and economic injustice, practices that favor men over women, white people over other races and ethnicities, and the affluent over everyone else. This pay equity legislation will have a major effect on reducing pay disparities. By removing salary history from the equation, employers will focus on the applicant's qualifications and skills when making offers that will help even the playing field for workers. We've not surveyed our members about pay equity specifically, but I believe that our members would be supportive of this legislation. I think this legislation is good for the health and human services sector, their workforce, and the clients they serve who are marginalized and impacted by pay disparities every day. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions you might have. Thank you. Thank you so much.
That, I'd like to open the floor to my colleagues for any questions or comments that you may have.
Well, thank you, Chair Brosa de Padilla. One of the things that was an interesting point, you said it tonight, but that also got to me is that although, especially in the hearing and in the conversation, rightfully so, we've centered this conversation on the folks that have been marginalized and most impacted, women, people of color, trans folks. But the truth is, when we stop asking pay salaries, it increases everyone's salary. And it's good for all workers in our community. And I think that that's a really important point to folks to know, that from this council, from this city, from this community, that paying people more is a good thing. And we're not even being altruistic here as the city of Columbus, where we get resources from income taxes that then allows us to hire more police officers, to put more firefighters on the street, to pave more roads. And so this, hopefully folks see, is part of our legislative philosophy around where we stand when it comes to people and their ability to make a good living and live in this city. So thank you for your leadership.
Councilmember Favor.
Well, I'm so incredibly excited for my fellow colleague and member of the Women's Caucus for advocating on behalf of this legislation. You know, as we work to address the disparities that lie within this conversation of pay equity, fighting on behalf of brown women, black women, others to be right up there where our white gentlemen are and where they're paid at that dollar. This legislation is meeting people where they're at. What you have done is help to normalize this conversation around negotiating, right? Which is often an uncomfortable conversation for a lot of women and folks who identify as women. And so I appreciate you and your leadership for having the foresight that until the day of true pay equity comes around, that you are working to address one of the barriers that many women have to face as it relates to being paid what they're worth. So thank you for your leadership, Councilmember Rosa De Padilla. Amazing job.
Thank you. Any other comments? Great. Before I move for passage, I would be remiss if I did not also acknowledge my legislative aide, Jessica Cáceres, and our Kirsten Estosi from our Legislative Research Department, who really were the co-architects of this piece of legislation. Also to young women starting out in their career, this is for y'all. And for all our babies. So with that, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Ordinance is passed. Congratulations. The final piece of legislation we have is in the Finance Committee. I chair that committee tonight. We have Ordinance 0555-2023. It's to authorize the city treasurer to modify his his contracts for various banking services with J.P. Morgan Chase Bank, Huntington Merchant Services, and Huntington National Bank, and to authorize the expenditure of up to $2,764,000 from various funds from within the city. The city contract with various financial firms for basic services, including J.P. Morgan holding the city's payroll account in Huntington to process credit card purchases and provide lockbox services. Are there any questions or comments about this pretty routine ordinance? Seeing none, I move for passage. Is there a second? Clerk, please call the row.
Mr. Bangston.
Abstain.
Ms. Barosa de Padilla. Mr. Brown. Mr. Dorans. Ms. Favor. Mr. Remy. President Harden.
Yes, ordinance is passed. Seeing no further business to be coming before council, want to wish everybody a happy St. Patrick's Day. Enjoy, but do so responsibly. We look forward to seeing folks in the parade. And is there a motion to adjourn? Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Meeting is adjourned. We have one non-agenda speaker. Mr. Wilkins.
on, everybody, don't stop, don't quit. Do it like this. Do it like this. Do it like this.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy. President Harden.
Can I get a motion to dispense with the reading of the journal? Second. Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy. President Harden.
Are there any additions or corrections to the journal? Hearing none, the journal is approved. We'll now go to the zoning committee. Councilmember Dorrance chairs that committee. All members serve on it. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President Harden. Before beginning tonight's zoning agenda, allow me to briefly explain our current rules pertaining to speaking before council on rezoning and council variances. We only hear staff presentations for ordinances that have a disapproval from recommending body, or if we have a public speaker signed up to speak against an ordinance. This evening, we have 0 public speaker slips. All speakers on the council variance, including city staff, area commissioners, and the applicants and members of the public, will be sworn in before they give testimony. Representatives of an area commission and applicants are always able to speak on an ordinance and do not need to fill out a speaker slip. On the advice of the city attorney's office, I will now swear in city staff. Please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, as you shall answer to pains or penalty of perjury? If so, please say I do. Thank you. Please let the record reflect that Kelsey Preby from the Department of Building and Zoning Services and Ann Bleschmidt from the Department of Public Service have been sworn in. First, we have Ordinance 0227-2023 to rezone 1010 West Fifth Avenue, being 2.52 plus acres located on the northwest corner of West Fifth Avenue and Jarrett Avenue from C1 Commercial, R4 Residential, and N Manufacturing Districts to AR3 Apartment Residential District. The applicant is Preferred Living, care of David Hodge, attorney. Proposed use in mixed-use development. State's Department recommendation is approval. The Development Commission's recommendation is approval 6-0. The 5th by Northwest Area Commission's recommendation is disapproval 2-3. Due to the Area Commission's vote, we will now hear a presentation from Building and Zoning Services. Ms. Preby, the floor is yours.
The requested AR3 Apartment Residential District and concurrent council variance will permit a mixed-use development with up to 7,400 square feet of commercial space and a maximum of 208 apartment units over 2 subareas. The site is located within the boundaries of the 5th by Northwest Area Plan, which recommends mixed-use and medium-density mixed residential land uses at this location. Additionally, the plan includes early adoption of the C2P2 design guidelines. The proposal is compatible with adjacent residential and light industrial uses and is also consistent with the land use and design recommendations of the plan and C2P2 design guidelines. Therefore, City Department's recommendation is for approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do any of my colleagues have any questions for the department? Seeing none, I would like to ask Mr. David Hodge, our attorney for the applicant, to make a presentation at this time. Mr. Hodge? Thank you for being down here tonight. The floor is yours, sir.
Sure, thank you. President Harden, Chair Dorrance, members of council, David Hodge, attorney for the applicant, Preferred Living. I'm going to be reasonably brief here. Fifth Avenue, as you all know, is a highly intense mixed-use corridor, really from 33 over on the west, down through campus, Dennison Place, Victorian Village to Short North on the east. The property that is the subject of this rezoning and the information's in your packet, you can see it is an M. It is predominantly a straight M manufacturing zoning classification, which along this corridor of Fifth Avenue is truly a relic of a bygone day. The rezoning is to an apartment residential district with some companion variances that allow this to be a mixed-use redevelopment with first floor commercial units above, which is what we're trying to do in 2023. The existing development on the property, and I think there are some photos in there. There's a flex office warehouse building that is obsolete. There is an auto repair use right along 5th with their storage yard with salvage vehicles up along 6th. So in terms of what's there today, what it's being replaced by, both in terms of zoning, the architecture, and the site plan that we are committing to, this is a drastic improvement above and beyond what is there today. This is also in a CRA, and there will be the provision of some affordable housing here on the property. We'll comply with that and work with Neighborhood Services or the Department of Development on just how that implementation occurs. I'll stop there and do my best to answer any questions and appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Hodge. Any of my colleagues have any questions at this time for the applicant? Thank you.
Thanks.
I'd like to provide some additional details on this application before I call for a vote tonight. Upon receiving the ordinance, my staff and I reached out to the 5th by Northwest Area Commission to learn more about their concerns to see if there remained a reasonable path forward. We spoke with the zoning chair of the commission, who missed the full commission vote back in December due to illness, but he let us know that he was personally supportive of the project. Based on our discussions with the commission chair and the applicant, it was clear that additional changes to the project would not likely result in area commission approval. While council appreciates the time and attention that our area commissions take in providing recommendations on applications, however, we use those area commission recommendations as only part of our evaluation process that I, as chair of the zoning committee in this body, takes in deciding whether or not to move an application forward. When I took over the chair of the zoning committee, I announced 9 different zoning priorities after speaking with all my colleagues that would help to utilize to guide our decision-making on these matters. This was important to me to make sure that we were being more transparent about how these decisions were being made at council. In my view, while this application does not have area commission approval, it meets 6 out of those 9 council zoning priorities, including affordable housing, city staff and development commission recommendation, proximity to public transit, job creation and proximity to job centers, private investment in public infrastructure, and the proposed density matches the area infrastructure and adjacent uses. Also like to stress that Greater Columbus needs to double our home construction over the next decade in order to meet the demands of our growing region. This is incredibly important as we consider the affordability and the supply and demand that pushes on our housing market here in Columbus. According to a report by the BIA, we need 30,000 units over the next decade for households making less than $50,000 a year and 20,000 units that make less than $75,000 a year. For these reasons and others that I've listed, I feel like this is a strong application, one that includes affordable housing, connected to public transit in the middle of a growing jobs corridor along Fifth Avenue, and I support this ordinance. So with that, I'd like to pause and see if any of my colleagues have any questions or comments. Last, I would like to thank the applicant for agreeing to adhere to our new CRA standards, which will increase affordability on this project as well. So with that, if there's no other questions or comments, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you. Next, we have Council Variance 0228-2023 to grant a variance provisions of Section 3333.03, AR3 Apartment Residential District Uses, 3309.14 Height Districts, 3312.21A Landscaping and Screening, 3312.25 Maneuvering, 3312.29 Parking Spaces, 3312.49 Minimum Number of Parking Spaces Required, 3321.05B2 Vision Clearance, 3321.07B Landscaping, 3333.15C Basis of Computing Area, 3333.18 Building Lines, and 3333.24 Rear Yard. Columbus City Codes for the property located at 1010 West Fifth Avenue to permit a mixed-use development with reduced development standards in the AR3 Apartment Residential District. The applicant is Preferred Living, care of David Hodge, attorney. Proposed use of mixed-use development. State's Department recommendation is approval. Fifth by Northwest Area Commission's recommendation is disapproval, 2-3. This is a companion variance to the rezoning we just heard a moment ago. At this time, I'm not going to request a presentation from the department unless any of my colleagues would like one. Seeing none, I first move to accept the entire staff report into evidence as an exhibit.
Second.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Accepted.
Next, I move to adopt the findings of staff as the findings of council.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Adopted.
Next, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you. That's all I have in the zoning committee this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. See no further business. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.